Hey everybody, Sherry the Cat Lady here again with Catlady Videos vlog number 5. Today we're going to introduce you to our big boy Swipper. Hey all my fellow cat lovers, Sherry the Cat Lady here inviting you to join my husband Marvin and I on our journey through life in a multi-cat home. We hope to give you a real and honest look at the rewards and challenges of loving and caring for all of our babies. Well, like I said, today we're going to introduce you to our boy Swipper. Sometimes I call him my woolly mammoth and you'll see in the pictures why. On a hot June afternoon in 2017, and I know it was hot because I live in the South and it's always hot in June, I looked out my bedroom window and caught a glimpse of a little kitten. It was a small baby, probably 8 weeks old, and it had a beautiful pattern. It was like a black and a gray. It was a swirly marble pattern. He was really pretty. But naturally, when he saw me, he ran and hid. It had only been about 3 months since I had caught Venus, and I had learned a lot about how to catch a kitty during that time, so this time it only took me a couple of days. When I brought him inside, he was scared naturally, so I just let him hide under the bed until he felt safe enough to come out. It didn't take him as long as it did Venus. I think he sensed that there was another kitten around, and I think all cats can sense that. I know all my older cats, they always seem to know when there's a kitten because they're just more patient with them. They don't try to hurt them or anything. If you've ever noticed that, let me know in the comments. I'd like to know if anybody else has experienced that. He's always been a very timid little cat. I could take him in the bathroom where it was a small space where he'd be locked up with me, and he'd come to me and let me hold him and love him. He'd just purr. But outside of that bathroom, he was scared to death of me. It didn't take long for him to come around, and Venus even started being nice to him. They became friends. They played together and napped together, unless Tig was inside. When Tig was inside, Venus had to be with him. But it didn't take a real long time for them to allow Swipper to lay with them too. They started to clean him and he'd clean them, and just like that, Swipper made friends. We've always tried to encourage all of our kitties to use the cat door and enjoy the outside as well as the inside. Since we've got the containment system, I always felt that they would be safe. But when I take Swipper outside, it was like all of a sudden he didn't know who I was anymore. He was afraid of me and wouldn't let me touch him. He'd just run from me like I was a stranger. So needless to say, I didn't take him out a whole lot. But now his curiosity gets the better of him sometimes, and you can sometimes see him, he'll slip out the yard when we don't even know he's out there. But he don't go too far from the house. And as crazy it is, he'll stay out there and enjoy it until he sees us see him. And when he sees us watch him, he acts like he's done something wrong and runs back in the house. Like I said, he's always been timid and maybe a little underdeveloped, I've often thought. His meow was a tiny little squeak. It still is. He never wanted to bite or wrestle your hand like all my other kittens have. And at a year old, he had never even sprayed. I had gotten a space certificate from a non-profit to have him taken care of, but before I could get him there, we found ourselves smack in the middle of a hurricane. It was Hurricane Michael in 2018. Normally living in South Georgia, we didn't worry too much about hurricanes, but this one was different. We were very worried, and for good reason. We were some of the thousands that were out of power for days. And being without power in the South can be bad because it can be and was hot in October. The one thing about South Georgia is we can have all 4 seasons in a 24-hour period. So to help with the heat, we had to open windows throughout the house. Having as many cats as we've had over the years, we don't have screens on most of our windows. So we'd open them up because of our containment fence, and we weren't worried about escape. But in our bedroom, we have 4 windows. 2 on the back of the house out into the containment part, and then 2 on the side of the house that were not in the containment part. When we had the ones on the side of the house open, we always try to make sure that no one was in the room. But somehow we missed it that day. I guess he was hiding under the bed, but Swipper got out. We searched and searched and called as long as we possibly could, but the people in Texas can tell you right now that when you're without power, every day you're in survival mode. In our case, we were out looking for ice and water, how we were going to cook our meal that day. It was all a production every day. We had to do this. We had to charge our phones on vehicles, and it was just hard to survive. So it kind of limited the time I could, but I was constantly worried about my baby. We were luckier than a lot of people, and our power was only off for about 5 days. But when it got back on, I just went to look for Swipper full time. I called and searched, and we walked the neighborhood. I did all the things all the sites told me about, except for one, and that was a trap. But I didn't have a trap, so I just kept on doing the things I could do, and it was nothing. I'd go out at night and shine the flashlight, hoping to see eyes light up. And when I would see sometime, but it was a little black cat from down the road, and I'll tell you about him later on. There's a story about him too. But it was never Swiper. There was a couple of people on our road that had multiple cats like we did. One lady lived maybe a mile down the road. She has lots of cats, and we showed her his picture, and she was more than happy to just keep an eye out for him. And she got our number and said she would call if she saw him. And then there's another house that's maybe a quarter of a mile down the road. They're not quite so gracious, but I told them my situation, and they said they hadn't seen anything, and I let it go. Well, November came and went, and so did December. Most everybody had pretty much given up, but there was just something in me that couldn't with Swiper. I've had cats go missing before, never to come back, and I accepted it. But something told me not to give up on him. I went about my business every day, and I guess got a little better at it, not thinking about him so much. But I always had hope and I always told Marvin that I had a feeling he was nearby. One day in January, I was out in the yard working on a project or something, and the lady that lived the furthest from me came by and pulled in my yard and told me that she had just seen a cat cross the road that looked like the picture I had shown her. And he was crossing the road going toward the house of the other people that was like a quarter of a mile down the road. So we went down there and told the people what the lady had told us that she saw. And although they acted a little strange about it still, one of them did speak up and say that they had seen a new stray hanging around that matched my description. I asked them if I could keep an eye out. I didn't want them to think I was just lurking around the yard, but I wanted to know if I could keep an eye out for them. And they live at the end of our dirt road, so every time we got at the end of our dirt road, we stopped at the stop sign, and they were directly in front of us. So every time I went to town, I had to go by that house. Well, one day when I was turning to the right, headed to town, I looked over my left shoulder and saw a long-haired cat sitting in the yard. I could only catch a glimpse of him, but my heart just raced. Could it be Swiper? I still wasn't sure because he ran when I stopped the car. So I went on to do my errands, and when I got home, I told Marvin I thought I had seen him. So I started carrying my binoculars with me, and the next time I saw him, I was able to pretty much confirm it was him. It was my Swiper boy. Knowing that a trap was the only thing I had not tried, I went home and ordered one immediately. The next day, I took Marvin with me, and he was out front again. Now, their yard is as big as a football field, so that's why the binoculars came in handy. But he was outside again. Marvin agreed when he looked that it was more than likely it was Swiper. I was so excited I couldn't wait for my trap to get here, so I went to our local Humane Society and borrowed theirs. We'd done that once before to trap a possum that got trapped inside our yard one time. So Marvin and my youngest son were working on a fence, and I went to set up the trap. I put a can of a loud-smelling tuna cat food or something out there that I knew that he liked. I left the trap there and came back home. I couldn't sit still wondering if he smelled it yet or what was happening. After about 35 or 40 minutes, I couldn't wait any longer, and I went to get in the car to go check. Marvin said, "You know he's not there yet, but I know you got to check." After I left, he told my son there was no way that I had caught him that quick. All the while, I was thinking to myself, he's going to eat those words if I've caught him this quick. So when I get down there, there was something in my trap. It was Swiper. When I walked up to him, he looked at me like I was a stranger. He was so scared, it just broke my heart he didn't know me anymore. But he had been gone for about 3 months. I believe it was October 11th or 12th that he got out, and this was January 22nd. So he had been out for a while. I worried about him all the time in the cold, but he's a really long-haired cat, as you see, so I guess that helped him out a lot. But I knew if I could just get him home, he would come around. After a few days, he did. It took Tig and Venus a few days to get used to him again. It's like they had forgotten him too. Well, after a little while, everybody calmed down and everything went back to normal, except something wasn't quite right about Swiper. He wasn't playful anymore, and he didn't want treats anymore. He got his name Swiper because always when you walk by him, if he's within reach, he swipes out at you. and he played a good bit before. At the time he got out, he was probably 9 or 10 pounds, but with long hair he looked heavier, so it was hard to tell sometimes. I started to notice too that sometimes when he would eat wet food, he'd paw at his mouth with his paw and then run off real fast like he was hurting and trying to run out of it or something. It wasn't too long after he'd gotten home, I'd made him an appointment to have him neutered, and I asked the vet to check his mouth. Well, we got a call saying that he had stomatitis and we would need to pull most of his teeth. He pulled all but 5 of my baby's teeth. I was so worried about how it was going to affect him. How can he eat with only 5 teeth? But as it turns out, there was no need to worry. It was like I had a different cat. He actually started to eat like never before. And here's the footage of the first time he was playful again. I was so excited I just had to get it on video. Never thought I'd be sharing with you guys. And as far as Swipper goes, it was all good from there. He started eating and playing and swiping just like his old self. And now my big baby is a whopping 18-pounder. But we couldn't be happier to have him.